Like every quarter, we're going to look at the Q4 2023 earnings presentation. So that's for the last quarter of 2023. So you have to, in your mind, you have to travel back a little bit. So Pearl Abyss is the parent company of CCP Games, the developers of EVE Online. Pearl Abyss also has other games, mainly Black Desert Online, and they have a bunch of games in the pipeline. So does CCP. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to jump in here. And we're going to start with their overview slide. So typically, their overview slide is a good way for you guys to see what they want investors to know. They're not going to be completely upfront, so don't take this as like an actual transparent and realistic, subjective or objective status report. This is totally what they want investors to know, right? So when they talk about EVE, they're going to talk about, okay, in 2023, we put a lot of effort into improving content for new users. Yeah, I mean, they've been doing this for 2 years, and I guess, yes, they also did a little bit on the on the new player experience last year. What's more exciting is that in Q4 we had Havoc and we have an EVE Vanguard playtest, and you're going to see the impact that had on the financials in a second here. So these are the big things. Another thing about EVE here that they have in here is the new IP that they're developing. And they're talking about the soft launch of EVE Galaxy Conquest in some countries. That's the 4X mobile game that most of you haven't tried. All right. Now, let's talk about the actual financial performance. So you can see here that it was not, I repeat, it was not a good quarter for Pearl Abyss, right? So if you look at what these numbers say, you can see that Q4 revenue year over year, you want to compare these year over year, it has dropped quite significantly, and the operating profit is a operating loss of 5.5 billion Korean won. If you look at the net profit, we're also just slightly negative, so overall not a good quarter for Pearl Abyss. Now, the last quarterly announcement 3 months ago, after that announcement, the stock for Pearl Abyss dropped about 20% in the aftermath, okay? This time it rose about 70%. It rose about 7%, right? But you have to look at that in context. So one, in the past 6 months, the stock has dropped about 40%. So right now we're talking a very, very low baseline if we're talking the stock rose 7%. And the whole confidence that investors have in a company like Pearl Abyss is the new IP that is coming out, because that is typically what brings in the big bucks. And the last quarterly earnings call, they announced that their 2 big new IPs that are coming out, Crimson Desert and Doke V, are delayed, and they're probably going to be coming out in what back then was late 24, and now it looks like 2025 that they're coming out. So that is what's having investors nervous, and that is why they don't like to talk right now about the new IP that they're developing on the Pearl Abyss side. Now, if we move over to the revenue breakdown, this is pretty much the only EVE-specific slide in here where we get to see financials on EVE. And you can see that is the box right here. This is the EVE revenue compared to the last 4 quarters. And so we can see that year over year, so if we compare quarter 4 2022 to quarter 4 2023, EVE Online revenue rose from 17.3 billion to 19.9 billion Korean won. Now, last year we also had currency impacts in here. This year that is not really the case. The currency difference is only about 3%. So this is an actual 15% year over year revenue increase from EVE Online, and that is fantastic news for EVE Online. Like there's no other ways to say that. If you're EVE Online, if you're CCP Games, you feel really, really good about this. All right. Not only that, but if we move over here and we look at the quotes I took from the transcript, okay, this is where it gets exciting. Okay, let's look let's look first at the second quote right here. Let's start with the second quote. All right. These efforts led to the highest numbers of EVE daily concurrent users in November during the past 5 years, based on the same dates, and the daily revenues also recorded the highest peak during the last 5 years, leading to firm financial performance. Now, the reason this wording is weird is because it's translated from Korean. All right. But you can't deny that if you have a highest peak in daily revenues recorded over the last 5 years, you're feeling good about your product. All right. Now, the years before weren't great, but Havoc brought back the people. We're talking November. This is Havoc launch. This is people excited about this part, and so daily revenues and daily concurrent numbers. This is great. This is good for EVE Online. There's no two ways about it. Now, interestingly enough, let me go to the first point here. Until now, CCP Games has been servicing EVE Online and also has been developing games based on the EVE IP. From this year, there will be consecutive launchings of the games that have been in development, and we have expectations that this will be a year where we can make profits. Now, that sounds very good. On the other hand, you can interpret it as this is, most of the time we're not making profits. And we know that's the case. We know CCP Games hasn't been profitable the last couple of years because we get their Icelandic tax filings, and that's something that comes out in April, May, that Crota and I also do a show on, always analyze, and so we know that they're not making. But it's a funny statement to make in that this is all really, really powerful, great stuff, fantastic, high concurrent users, high daily income, but over the year still it's going to be difficult to make a profit. But at least it looks like 2024, they are hopeful that they are going to see CCP Games making a profit. Now, while we're on this page, let me go to the third quote. In the case of EVE Vanguard, which was already introduced and tested, we, through continuous development and content updates, plan to not only lengthen more time for user enjoyment, extend the time they want to play, I guess, but also are considering a proprietary business model line. And now, I know Crota and I are not sure what this means. I have yet to ask CCP. I doubt CCP is going to tell me what that means. Possibly it's just something that is lost in translation, but if you take this to the extreme, this could also mean new ways of monetization in EVE Vanguard. So, a very interesting quote. Not entirely sure what they mean by that, but it's remains to be seen. And so this is one of the big advantages that we have when EVE is doing well. They talk about EVE a lot in these investor calls, and we get to hear a lot about the development of the stuff that is going on in the EVE universe. Now, the last quote on here is something that we were wondering. So we had seen that CCP is moving offices in London. And so I was wondering whether that was based on that was a cost issue, and it looks like it, because in the transcript it says we will find areas and make improvements so that day-to-day costs can be efficiently saved, including changing the CCP London office location so that more efficient work can be done in a bigger and more reasonably priced space. And that just means that they had to move out of the London space because it was too expensive, which is nothing new. I mean, all companies right now are looking to cut costs. We just look at the numbers. Pearl Abyss is not doing great. They're having a terrible quarter. They need to show investors that they're cutting costs. And so it's, this also, as somebody says in chat, yes, everyone's working from home anyway, or a lot in many companies. So it's time to, move to a more cost-conscious space. And so it's not surprising, but, a funny little tidbit. Let's go back to the investor presentation. So the rest of this, so EVE up 15% year over year. Black Desert, on the other hand, down 16% year over year. Overall, Pearl Abyss down 10% over year. So this is, this doesn't spell well for Pearl Abyss, because their core IP is not doing well. Their new IP is being delayed, so they lean heavily on CCP Games, because the CCP Games core IP has had a great financial quarter, and their IP is actually developing. Vanguard, their mobile Forex game, and they even mentioned Project Awakening on here, which we also just spent a lot of time talking about on the Meta show. So this also means that North America and EU are becoming much more important for Pearl Abyss. So they've the share of revenue made in this region has risen to almost 60% of the overall company revenue, and this also means that the PC part of the revenue is getting much higher because of EVE Online revenues being higher. If we look at their operating expenses, it's interesting to see labor is basically unchanged. So, they hired a few more people, but the overall labor cost is unchanged to last quarter. They paid more commissions, and I think commissions in here are mostly NetEase in China. But that's just, it was low last quarter, and now it's just going back in line to where it was the quarters before. They have cut advertising by a lot, and also that is probably cost-cutting measures because they're not doing well financially. And their depreciation and amortization, that's just the write-offs from their assets, is fairly constant. The other costs has increased a lot, but not compared to the fourth quarter last time. So this is fine and totally normal. Overall, staff is a little bit higher, but not by much. And so if we look at the outlook that they're having, again, let's look at EVE Online here. New expansion coming out in June. We know that EVE Vanguard is going to have another playtest. And in terms of new IP being developed, again, their name EVE Galaxy Conquest, and here they name Project Awakening, which is the blockchain game that is in development right now, that is having various rounds of tests and showcases, as I think they called it in the transcript. So that's pretty much it. I think we've covered everything in here. Overall, one can say Pearl Abyss is a Korean company, and they are in Korea. And in Korea, Blizzard and Riot let a lot of developers go in Q4. So it's a tough environment right now in Korea for game developers, and Pearl Abyss is also struggling. So overall, this didn't wreck their share price as it did last time. To the contrary, because expectations are just much lower than they are now. And they did hint at, or they did talk about the BDO launch in Black Desert Online launch in China, so that might have also had something to do with it. So let's hope that it goes on like this. Very, very positive, and happy to answer any of your questions in stream chat now. All right, Bamki, thank you for your raid, and welcome again. Second raid this week, I guess. Yeah. We are talking about Pearl Abyss Financials, which is the parent company of CCP Games. All right, let me see. If you typed something in chat and I missed it because I was enveloped in my explanation of this financial report, then please repeat your question so I don't have to scroll back all the way. But I'll try to catch some of these here.